and is an administrative role that sits in the Ethics and Compliance Office but has a direct report to the Board of Trustees. This role was created after the Sandusky crisis about 5 or 6 years ago as part of the remediations that were created by the Freeh Commission report. The Freeh Commission report bears the name of Louis Freeh, who was the former FBI head and former federal judge who Penn State hired to conduct a serious internal review of its processes and its people after the Sandusky case hit the headlines. The Freeh Commission, though, if you would think about it, is kind of a double-edged sword. It was ultimately after the university had a very difficult time and had a very difficult experience, they stopped. They declared a full stop, and they gave themselves a completely neutral outside investigator. So people at Penn State still think of the Freeh report both positively and negatively. What I would say about it is somebody who now administers a lot of that oversight and a lot of that ability here, I'd actually call it a pretty positive development, because it took in 300 suggestions from Penn State people on ways to deal with crises. And I kind of wanted to walk through some of the crises, some of the things that I do in my job, and then sort of see how my job is essentially, I think, to steer the university from future tragedy. Now, I'm not smart enough to say that I have the ability to do that in any construct. It's usually process and policy that will get you there. But it also has a little bit of understanding where the icebergs are floating in the North Atlantic when you're sailing the Titanic, and that they might be farther south than you think they are. Because one of the things that is true is that the big ship of college athletics is very hard to turn around. They are big and they don't change direction quickly. And that's one of the hard parts. And we also think about it, any business that's Penn State is the number 8 athletic department in revenue in the country. We're sitting anywhere between about 6 and 8 in a given year, and we're sitting somewhere between 148 and about $160 million in revenue. Depending on how the Big Ten bowl money comes through this year, could be 160. If it comes in a little less than that, it might be 150. We're in that $150 million range. We're about the exact same size in terms of revenue as the University of Alabama. Difference in our process, if we look at it, our athletic program supports 31 varsity sports. Alabama has 17. So we're doing almost double in athletics, which kind of makes you think immediately how easy it is for them to divert revenue and put it into the football program. That's why if you look online, there's a lot of online stuff about their football weight room and the new wet lounge they have to manage that process. It's pretty significant. Is it easier for me to be recorded if I'm standing over there? That's the only question I could ask if you're looking at the camera. I don't know if I'm streaming or not. Short answer is, it's a big business. And when you're talking about billions of dollars of value in college athletics, billions of dollars of reputational value, the cost of a crisis becomes hugely significant. The cost of a crisis may be ones that can't be undone in a period of years. It may take decades. Penn State, I think, is remarkably fortunate that my role was created not because I have it, because my predecessor and a lot of good people did a lot of great work to declare a full stop, to analyze the crisis, to analyze the conditions that became problematic, and put processes and people in place to stop those things, to deal with them. But what are the crises out there? Well, I put this one out here today because it just got reported last night that the University of Maryland, who had a football player die in July, I guess, or May, in a workout, Jordan McNair, has just issued their 250-page report on the culture of their football team. And it basically says an extensive independent review of the University of Maryland's football program determined it fostered a culture where problems festered because too many players feared speaking out, but stopped short of calling the program toxic. That's a really interesting challenge, is essentially the program created its own problems by its own culture. Now, I'm very fortunate to say this about Penn State. I don't know if we're going to win this week. I don't know if we get by Michigan or Wisconsin in the coming weeks, but I'm pretty confident about the culture of my football team. And it's one thing I'm very, very happy about, and I never worry about that. Or I shouldn't say I never worry about it. I worry about it not as strongly as some other things. I'm lucky that we have a coach who has a very modern and positive culture. But coaches in football have this challenge. And when they result in deaths, they become 250-page reports and possibly hundreds of millions of dollars of lawsuits. Penn State, I think, is just in the process of settling their last lawsuits stemming from this case. I got Anderson Cooper. He didn't do this. There we go. But this guy. We spent about $300 million in damages paid out from our coffers to settle cases with victims and legal fees coming from the Sandusky case. Sandusky case honestly began in 2011. So we're talking about dollars about now 10 years ago, 8 or 9 years ago's dollars. So plus or minus 300 million. Now, I told you we make 150 million, 153 million a year. We spend 152 million in that same year. We do not have a lot of positive cash flow from our program. We pay a football coach $6 million. We pay a basketball coach $1.5 million. We pay a lot of people, and we pay a lot of staff to fill the stadium, and we hope that the TV money comes in and makes it work. But we, because of the 31 sports, spend almost every dollar going out, and that's an interesting piece. Sandusky cost the university $300 million that it didn't have. Where'd that money come from? Endowment, to be honest. Some from insurance, but most of it from our endowment. We had to capitalize our nest egg that keeps us running or cannibalize our nest egg that keeps us running to pay some of these cases. That's $300 million. That's 7 years ago. More recently, you might have heard about this one. I keep enlarging it. You may have heard of the challenges of Baylor, which had a massive sexual assault scandal, mostly focused around its football team. Baylor has already paid, this is more recent than this really picks up somewhere in 2017, 16, 17. Baylor has paid already $500 million in legal fees and settlements, and it has a major class action lawsuit coming. Baylor, when you get to the end of it, is going to be all in at $1 billion. Now, let's think about this. Baylor makes less money than Penn State does from its athletics program. It's in a slightly smaller Power 5 conference, the Big 12, and it's private, religiously affiliated university. So maybe there's some insurance in place, but where does this $1 billion come from? Well, if we think about it, it comes from every student who's going to Baylor, it comes from every alumnus who went to Baylor, and it comes from every competitive decision Baylor is going to make over the next, not just 5 or 6 years, because the damage at Penn State has largely been offset through a variety of factors, but Baylor is going to be a competitive set with TCU, SMU, the University of Houston, Rice, where Baylor is not going to be able to put a lazy river in its student center when SMU does, or TCU does. They're not going to be able to renovate their dorms when other schools will. And that's going to make decisions of whether students go there. So unless Baylor can figure out an amazingly new way to make a lot of money or find a new money source, it's going to really be a competitive, competitive wound to the university over the years and everybody from the community. How do you protect it? Well, this crisis was very different than the Maryland one. It's very different than the Penn State one. And it's very different than the one that came up in Michigan State, another Big Ten school that we're facing, or Ohio State that's lived through a recent one where doctors committed sexual abuse, or the University of Southern California, which has nothing to do with athletics, but a doctor in their students' health service committed sexual abuse and settled that. That case, I believe, settled for more than $100 million just this past week for USC as a private university. So what we're really talking about is we're talking about giant wounds to the university structure, the institution structure. Now, why do we care about that? Because these institutions, in almost every case, are enormous, important economic, social, and competitiveness centers for the entire community they're around. Let's give the quick Penn State analogy. Penn State, depending on the day, and depending on whether the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center has opened or affiliated with a new hospital, is either the largest or second largest employer in the state of Pennsylvania. we add more to the GDP of Pennsylvania than any other company out there in terms of wages and dollars spent in the community. And it's a university of 26 satellite campuses too, so it's a big entity. Baylor, about 20,000 students, the largest Southern Baptist convention school in the country. Michigan State, one of the two or three largest employers in Michigan, and we're talking about massive issues that we're dealing with. So how do you do this? What's the job of an athletic integrity officer, and what's the focus as we look at this? Well, doesn't mean that we can't have scandals in almost every circumstance. It doesn't mean we can't have protection or failures of protection in every circumstance. We can have them in a lot of dimensions. But athletics is by far the most public. It is by far the most prioritized in terms of being in the moment. And it's the one that is almost every case avoidable, if you think about it. Or at least the ability to minimize it becomes important. And that's one of the things I think that the role of looking at this and why the job that I took and interviewed for kind of out of the blue, because I was a professor and enjoying my work